Hello, everybody. I'm Mango Thunderslice, and today I'm going to be talking more about the hidden history of humanity, and specifically in the context of today's crazy, super polarized political environment. With the whole Antifa versus the Nazis, and this whole narrative that's being spun of this this fight between these polarities of people gathering under the new white supremacy movements, and others that are basically gathering to beat them down and oppose them. And my video today is basically to show that both of these ideologies stem from the same source. That this narrative of white supremacists versus the Antifa and these leftists is just another contrived Hegelian dialectic of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. By creating fighting opposites, the people who have ruled this society for a long, long time are able to keep us, locked inside of this little theatrical mechanism that they create for us, right? As long as we're fighting against each other, we can never realize our greater common unity and realize that we are actually being pitted against each other by this third entity, and that is purely for the purpose of the benefit of that third party. And without naming names right now, I'm just going to basically show through symbolism and through history exactly how these things, these fighting opposites, are not so different, but they're actually the same thing, and how this all fits into the pattern of ancient history and the control of information. And basically, in the course of showing this information, I hope that this will diffuse the tension and lead people down a path that actually will empower them, instead of giving all their energy endlessly into this vortex that they have created, right? Into this black hole, if you will, into their black sun. We should be pouring that energy into our own lives, and we should be building ourselves and building our own vortexes, if you will, or vortices, if you want to be English grammatically correct. So anyway, let's jump into it, shall we? So, Carl Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung, great psychologist, kind of a contemporary of Freud, but was more about, researching some of the more, mystical things, if you will, a collective unconscious, and the idea that, all of our consciousness isn't locked inside of our brain per se, but there's actually this network that we're all connected to, and this is the astral plane, the psychic plane, this realm of ideas and of language and of sounds and of numbers, and basically, where everything that's up here in our minds, and basically these ethereal concepts that we might not be able to hold a number 9, but nevertheless it's still a part of the world. It's not something we invented per se, it's something we discovered. Okay. And when we realize how all of life and all of matter is conscious, it's impossible to be violent towards other conscious beings, whether they be human or animal. Violence towards other conscious beings is a product of a philosophy that does not feel a very simple thing, empathy. That's what it is. Yes, the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experience of another, of either the past or present, without having the feelings, thoughts, and experience fully communicated in an objectively explicit manner. Okay, so this is level 1 psychic powers, is empathy right here. But we live in a culture that basically promotes these millions of micro traumas through the media and through these images, through inducing fear, right? By playing on the images and the archetypes that scare the shit out of humanity, right? They create all these influences, and even if a child isn't abused physically, or God forbid, like the crazy satanic ritual abuse stuff, we're all getting traumatized by these fearful images that are just thrown at kids every single day, and any of them whose parents basically plug them into the matrix and sit them down in front of that screen all day. Right? So empathy is what is lacking. And empathy is lacking on both sides, okay? On Antifa and on the Nazis, okay? And, there's something about this whole Nazi gathering that strikes me as entirely false. I watched the Vice documentary, and they're interviewing Christopher Cantwell, right? Who's this, bald kind of like Nazi anarchist guy, like, who was part of the movement in Charlottesville. And it just doesn't even seem real. It seems like he's just playing a character, right? So it's just really interesting. And then you have the Antifa people who claim to be out there defending the rights of minorities, but really they're just communists who want to beat the shit out of, this made up, opponent that's been given to them. Again, like in our culture, it's okay to hate and want to kill and maim and destroy Nazis. And that's easy. It's one of those acceptable enemies, right? Like, well, a Nazi isn't a human. We can, like, they're just animals and we should kill them like animals. Again, the violence towards consciousness is not something that's usually restricted to animals or humans. Once a person has that violence in their soul, they will use it on everyone, right? So going unfortunately to the Washington Post, they do have actually a well put together article, at least about the symbols and slogans in Charlottesville, right? So we have the far right the National Socialist Movement, the American Nazis, right? And they have this flag. And so I'm going to be really breaking down some of these symbols and some of the colors involved, and basically all the archetypes and themes, and showing that really this isn't a fight between polar opposites. That actually Antifa and the Nazis are like the same. They're cut from the same cloth, if you will. So just showing the flags and some of the symbols, right? I guess the Detroit Red Wings logo has been appropriated, basically, or at least the kind of like solar, serrated disc spiral thing on the inside of it. Basically the all these different symbols, and there's a Nordic, kind of Triskelion with the angles, Kekistan. Vanguard America, resurrecting the fasces. That's a Roman symbol, right? Basically, the symbol of fascism. It's also in the United States House of Representatives building in the Congress, and a Confederate flag. So anyway, yeah, basically just the one that I thought was really most interesting is this one right here, the American Nazi flag. This right here contains a lot of thematic elements that play into exactly what I'm going to be showing, right? A black box, a black cube, right? We have this crossed black X. We have the red and the black mixed in with a weird mutated version of the American flag. Right. Here's the traditional Nazi flag, right? Swastika, of course, all it ever means is Nazis. That's all anybody knows. And so this symbol means evil and it's bad, and it should make you want to kill people. That's what the media wants you to do. And you'll notice very much that the color scheme is red, black, and white. Okay, throughout. That is their color scheme. Okay, now let's go over to Antifa. All right, so we've got all these hooded supposed anarchists. They're not anarchists, guys. They're communists, right? And there's a big difference. And so the real anarchists, the real anarcho-capitalists, right? The ones who actually believe in nonviolence. Basically, we've been arguing against these friggin' crazy morons for years now. But here they are, starting shit like we always knew they would. But yeah, basically you'll also notice that the anarcho-communist color scheme is, of course, that same red, black, and white. Red for the communism, black for the anarchism, and the white in the middle. So we have the same color scheme, right? They're fighting each other. They're polar opposites, but they're using the same colors, and they both feel no empathy for the other. They don't believe that the other is even a human. They're just animals to be beaten down, right? And here, basically, I have identified this in my Irish Tribe of Israel video, but basically the tribe of Levi, basically red, black, and white is the colors of the tribe of Levi, okay? And this was the tribe of Israel that basically went on to become the judges, right? They were the kind of the rulers of, the Israeli, the ancient kind of, there were lots of different tribes of Israel, right? And it was the tribe of Levi that eventually went kind of crazy with their power, and basically brought in the beginning of the real religious, spiritual, fascist hierarchical priesthood. This is the secret societies. This is the black lodges, right? Is the Levite priests basically? They were the Atanists, right? Moses, right? He's pictured with these same Levite colors because he was a Levite priest, right? And Moses was most likely the Pharaoh Akhenaten. He was the first Atenist who basically banned the worship of other gods and said that our God is the one and only, and we're gonna, basically go to war against anybody who doesn't worship our God, right? And so that was the beginning of really the militant monotheism. And of course, I've pointed out how London is the new Rome. Rome, London, Washington, D.C. are the new Roman Empire that never fell. And you see, of course, the redcoats also sporting those same colors. So, again, you can write this off, the coincidence theorists, as just, oh, they're just all wearing red, black, and white. But when you understand the genesis of these things, you'll understand that this is not a coincidence at all. It's literally the Levite priesthood showing their turf, essentially. And I'm going to be showing how basically I've pointed out how the God of the Old Testament, Jehovah, Yahweh, El, is Saturn. Okay, it was one of the ancient names for Saturn, and the whole Jesuit priesthood and all the modern day religions are basically Saturnalian cults, right? And one of the symbols affiliated with Saturn is a black cube, right? And you see this symbolism all over the world. And it's interesting, just again in our coincidence theory, what do Antifa also call themselves? The Black Bloc, right? I'm sure that's just a coincidence, right? And they all dress up in black so they can just beat people with bike locks and light trash cans on fire and release their rage because this is the only way that they feel powerful, I guess. And again, these guys are communists, right? Whether they self-apply that term or not, they are all communists. Again, I've been dealing with these people on the internet for a long time, well, at least before I got banned from Facebook, and they occasionally show up on these videos. But anyway, what you'll notice is, again, the color scheme, the red and the black, but also the symbol of the sickle and hammer is very close to another symbol, and that is the symbol of Saturn, of course, right? The cross and the crescent attached. So this is the astrological sign of Saturn. Again, almost identical to the sickle and hammer. You move the cross, and you just move these two overlay, and you have yourself a communist symbol, right? So the symbol of Saturn is affiliated with communism, right? This color scheme, right, is affiliated with the Nazis, with anarcho-communists, as well as, basically the Levite priesthood. And the Levite priesthood in a modern-day incarnation is the Jesuit priesthood, right? So the IHS monogram, the kind of Jesuit logo, again, you'll see the H when the H is stylized into a curve, you'll see this right here is the symbol of Saturn again, right? There in the Jesuit monogram. IHS is, Yesa is the Irish god of light, the original name of Jesus, right? The original Jews were the Irish, and what we're called Jews today, the Ashkenazim, they're from Eastern Europe. They became Jews somewhere about 1,000 years ago. They have literally no claim to Palestine, and basically, so the Irish were the original Jews, the original Druids, right, who were watching the stars and in tune with the cycles of nature. And the history goes back a lot further than that, and we're going to get into that in the history of this whole series. I'm just kind of breaking it down piece by piece as I can, but. So the IHS monogram of the Jesuits, again, the sign of Saturn, all right? So the Levite priesthood is the Jesuits. It is the Jesuits who basically, established the Nazi party. Again, you saw the Nazi officials, hanging out with the Catholic priests. Antifa, communism, Black Bloc, communism going back to the Bolshevik Revolution was instituted by the Jesuits, right? Unless you think I'm just some crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. Yeah, let's go back to some of the founders of America, and see what they had to say about it, right? It is my opinion that if the liberties of this country, the United States of America, are destroyed, it will be by the subtlety of the Roman Catholic Jesuit priests, for they are the most crafty, dangerous enemies to civil and religious liberty. They have instigated most of the wars of Europe. And that was Marquis de Lafayette, a French statesman who served in the Continental Army under George Washington. But we can forget about that because they'll just be tearing down all the statues soon enough, right? John Adams, second president of the United States. My history of the Jesuits is not eloquently written, but it is supported by unquestionable authorities, and very particular and horrible. The Jesuit order's restoration in 1814 by Pope Pius VII is indeed a step towards darkness, cruelty, despotism, and death. I do not like the appearance of the Jesuits. If ever there was a body of men who merited eternal damnation on earth and in hell, it is this society of Ignatius de Loyola, aka the Jesuits. All right, so yeah, not mincing words, really. Yeah, just really going for it. Abraham Lincoln, regardless of what you think about him, here's a quote from him. This civil war would never have been possible without the sinister influence of the Jesuits. We owe it to popery that we now see our land reddened with the blood of her noblest sons. Though there were great differences of opinion between the South and the North on the question of slavery, neither Jeff Davis, President of the Confederacy, nor any one of the leading men of the Confederacy would have dared to attack the North had they not relied on the promises of the Jesuits that, under the mask of democracy, the money and the arms of the Roman Catholic, even the arms of France, were at their disposal if they would attack us. I pity the priests, the bishops, and monks of Rome and the United States when the people realize that they are, in great part, responsible for the tears and the bloodshed in this war. I conceal what I know on that subject from the knowledge of the nation. For if the people knew the whole truth, this war would turn into a religious war, and it would all at once take a tenfold more savage and bloody character. It would become merciless as all religious wars are. It would become a war of extermination on both sides. Right? So these guys are not mincing words at all. Napoleon, the Jesuits are a military organization, not a religious order. Their chief is a general of an army, not the mere father abbot of a monastery. The aim of this organization is power, power in its most despotic exercise, absolute power, universal power, power to control the world by the volition of a single man, that is, the Black Pope, the superior general of the Jesuits. Jesuitism is the most absolute of despotisms, and at the same time the greatest and most enormous of abuses. Like, wow. Basically, I think that really drives the point home. I don't think I need to quote these anymore. You get the point that basically some of the most influential people in history did not think very highly of the Jesuit order and regarded them as one of the most dangerous, murderous, lethal organizations on the planet. And of course, it was the Jesuits who did the Inquisition for the Catholic Church. Nobody expects a Spanish Inquisition, right? Of course, it wasn't as humorous as Monty Python's depiction. It was pretty bloody and torturous and brutal, right? And they are, again, the Saturnalian representatives on Earth today, right? They represent the core of the Saturnalian philosophy. Here's kind of some artistic representation of Saturnalian symbols. You have the cube, you have the hourglass, right? You have the eye and the triangle, right? And so this Saturnalian symbolism is literally everywhere once you open your eyes to it, right? And there's specific geometry that goes along with it, very much this, cube, this hexagram, which is the two-dimensional rendering of a three-dimensional cube object. You see it in, on countless corporate logos, right? In movies, Hollywood is all about these weird cube symbols, right? It's everywhere. And again, when you open your eyes to it, you can't unsee it. It's literally like they live, you put on the glasses and then it's like, whoa, what is going on here? The Kaaba, right? Islam is so overtly Saturnalian, it's just silly. They're literally rotating anti-clockwise around this black cube, and that is exactly what the pole of Saturn looks like. It's a great storm in the form of a hexagram, and basically there's this black cube supposedly in the center, or that's kind of what the symbolism implies. The Borg, right, from Star Trek, flying by Saturn, and it represents the hive mind, right? It represents containment. Right, and so there's a lot of people out there going over the very surface level esoteric explanation of the black cube. Again, you see it here. The rabbis have the black cube, right? Saturn, people say that it's where the word Satan came from. Like it's affiliated with lead and cube and black, and basically there's the cube, the hexagon at the pole of Saturn, right? More from Hollywood, you have Loki, right, in the Avengers, he has the Tesseract, right, the hypercube. And the Transformers, right, the Allspark. It's just it's everywhere. Like, and at a certain point you got to ask, like, are they just what is the point? Why like they just really like boxes? Is that their deal? Like, but it's so methodical that it really begs the question of what exactly are they representing here? What are they resonating with? What are they showing to each other secretly that they know, right? And that is very much the secret knowledge of Saturn. And this can get kind of scary when you don't understand the real planetary evolution that's taken place, right? But at a certain point, Saturn, right, it became affiliated with authority, and the Roman capital was on Mons Saturnius, the mountain of Saturn, right? Rome was even called Saturnia. They celebrated their Saturnalia was a time of feast at December 25th, right? And this all makes sense when you go into the electric universe and you understand that Earth was most likely, based on the words of our ancestors all over the planet, that Earth was once a moon of Saturn, and there was this configuration, and Saturn, along with Mars, and at a certain point Venus hung much closer in the sky, right? And there was this flow of energy coming down to the planet, right? And from Earth, this looked like a world mountain, right? And it had this whole configuration in the sky, and this is what the different names of the gods are. They're the names of the planets. And what our ancestors were telling us with this whole mythological, this whole huge story of these families and this drama and Zeus raping all these women and what is going on? They're talking about the procession of the planets, at some point this configuration fell out and there was a flood. There was a major flood. There were probably several floods, but when we look at the ice core data, it's very clear that the climate was wandering on huge megacycles until about 10 to 12,000 years ago when we got locked into a very stable climate. And what we're in now, it looks like, has only existed for about 10 to 12,000 years. Before that, this was an entirely different planet. And truly, during those times, we had the megafauna, we had huge animals on this planet, right? But modern science tells us that humanity has only existed in this pattern. There was nothing before here. It was just a bunch of like dumb monkeys who couldn't do anything. But then we just appeared out of nowhere with fully formed civilizations and built aqueducts and pyramids just like out of nowhere, using slaves, I guess. So, the whole story of the academy is a total fraud, and it's so transparent once you actually start looking at the data and stop trusting blindly these priests in your university who are telling you what reality is without actually showing you what it is. And only by showing can we actually know. The Thule Society was basically the one of the precursors to the Nazi Party, right? Kind of like an occult society. And they were very much looking into the ancient history of the human species. And Thule actually was, it's pronounced a little different in German, but Thule was kind of a name of a capital of a fabled continent at the top of planet Earth called Hyperborea, right? So as the theory goes in basically the polar configuration, there was at the top of the Earth, there was something of a continent that was receiving the energy from the Rainbow Bridge, right, from the ladder to heaven. And that continent was Hyperborea, sitting at the top of the world, and Thule was one of the capitals. So these guys were looking into the ancient history of the human race, ancient spiritual technology, the nature of the universe, and the nature of gravity, right? And so these guys were definitely anti-Semitic and very racist. Again, they were a precursor to the Nazi Party, but they were affiliated kind of tangentially with another group called the Theosophists, right? And Helena Blavatsky was a 19th century kind of like mystical scholar. And they try and just wrap her in with the Nazis and make it sound like she was like the most evil woman on the planet. As of right now, I haven't found anything about this woman that actually makes me believe that she was evil. It looks like she was just a scholar and a mystic who was really trying to get to the bottom of the nature of reality. And you'll hear a lot of things on YouTube and the internet of these crazy Christians, who once they discover a little bit about the conspiracies, and then it's go to war with Satan. We gotta kill Satan, And again, they're locked in the division mentality. They don't know anything about how to get out of the matrix. They're just locked into like a different sector of it, right? They think they've got the key. They don't have the key. Right? You only get the key when you learn to stop judging, okay? I don't have any interest in getting up here and saying, Nazis are evil, I'm virtuous signaling, and Nazis are bad, right? That's just masturbation. It is totally pointless. I want to know what Nazism is, right? Same with Antifa. I don't want to just get up here and be, I'm a conservative, and I love America, and Antifa's gay, right? Okay? I want to know what Antifa. I want to know where these people are coming from, because if I have an interest in building a, harmonious society, and so if we've got these crazy, crazy people with no empathy going and bashing each other's heads in, that's a problem, right? And theosophy literally means the wisdom of the gods, right? And theosophy is kind of like a spiritual science, if you will, looking into the life force. Like, and I haven't really looked too deeply into theosophy, but the Nazis were definitely in the Thule Society. They were very interested in this, and there's a concerted effort to not just demonize the Nazi Party, but to demonize this information that was affiliated with it. Here you have Blavatsky's Mystic Brooch, and for those who only know the surface meaning of these symbols, right? The swastika and what we're calling the Star of David here together, people are like, what? We've got a Jewish symbol and a Nazi symbol, but again, you don't know the meaning of the symbols. You don't. So that's what I'm making this video for, right? The cross of the Magi is another name for the swastika. It is an ancient symbol, right? And there is some tremendous meaning encoded within the symbol, and it basically represents the spiral unfolding of the universe, basically the life force energy, right? The power that drives the sun, the power that drives the earth, the power that drives Saturn, the power that drives the human, the power that drives the atom. Everything is spiraling, right? And the swastika very much represents that. And even the numbers of the different squares like represents the time scales within time scales, and the squaring of the circle. And basically, this symbol here, there's a Buddha, right? And then here you see the swastika, and where specifically you see the swastika over the Buddha's heart. The Buddha was the first avatar on, at least in this age past the cataclysm, right? And basically the spiral energy is emanating from his heart, right? And in our bodies, the heart is what pumps the plasma. It's what keeps the spiraling force moving throughout the body, that animates the cells and fills oxygen into the blood, right? And everything is the phi ratio, right? Everything is organized by this spiral. And the reason that this number is so important is because it literally governs the spiral flow of energy, of electricity throughout the universe, right? So on the galactic scale, energy is just spiraling in, spiraling in, spiraling in. And along this plane, right, it all spirals in. And then basically you'll have at the top and at the bottom, you'll have a jet of energy shooting right through it, a jet shooting up and a jet shooting down, you know. Um, and Blavatsky in the Secret Doctrine, basically, she's just getting into like the evolution of the Earth and the cosmos from the Eastern, Oriental, philosophical traditions. The Manvantara, right? These are the age of a Manu. So this is when you start to get really like when people say that all of humanity exists within like the last 10,000 years. They just really they really must not have taken a look at the Hindu cosmology. Okay, take a look at this. The Hindus, they have cycles of time going, so 10 to the 1, basically, we've got 10 to the 0 is a second, so 10 to the 7th is a year, right? They've got cycles of time going to 10 to the 22nd, and they've got basically a measurement of time of a 1/10 millionth of a second, right? Called a Truti. This is incredible. Like and one of these. Manvantara is 306 million human years. Okay, why would these people have even a word for that amount of time if humanity is only 10,000 years old? I mean, that's ridiculous. Same thing with 1/10 millionth of a second. What sort of people who are just like naked savages have use for that kind of a concept? These were profoundly mathematical people, and the length of time scales that they are talking about, same thing with the Maya, a back tune is like 800,000 years, right? And why would they be talking about these if not that they were alive for much longer, like millions of years, and they were around long enough to develop mental structures where these amounts of time actually made sense because they experienced them, right? Dan Winter, right? The fractal recursion of charge. Gravity does not explain. Einsteinian relativity does not explain gravity. It's a bunch of woo-woo metaphysical nonsense, right? The electric universe does explain gravity. Gravity is a electrical phenomenon, right? Heavenly bodies are magnetically, or they are electrically charged, and there is energy spiraling into them, right? And that basically bends atoms into a dipole and causes the action at a distance effect, that is what we call gravity, is the things move towards the object, not because it has mass, but because it's electrically charged, and it's basically bending the atoms and pulling things towards it. So, and again, that, is where you get into the crazy flying saucer stuff, that if you can create kind of a gyroscopic, effect with a rotating magnetic field, you can basically nullify the force of gravity. And this is supposedly how the pyramids were built, was at certain celestial alignments, using certain sounds and tones and vibrations. These limestone hexagonal lattice crystal structure stones were able to be lifted as if they, had no weight at all. And that, like, stone could be manipulated like clay or putty during these times, right? So yeah, that's the nature of gravity. The torus, right? The ring, the ring of power, right? The donut shape that defines all of this. That, the Earth is a torus, the galaxy is a torus, sun is a torus, atom is a torus, right? This is basically all the energy in the universe. You can conceive of the entire universe as moving in this flow. And actually, they they just mapped the structure of the entire universe, and they're they're using their supercomputers to kind of model it in new ways. And when we look at it, it forms this just beautiful superstructure. And you can, from certain angles, you can really see how it's all curving in on itself. The entire universe is this great egg, right? This great torus that's all spinning in on itself. And when we tap into that force, we have the ability to unlock limitless energy. And I'm not just talking about free energy power plant devices and all that, but we are the power generators. The human body is able to access energy by tapping into this, right? The tesseract, another one of those symbols that's basically communicating the same thing. It's a cube within a cube, right? Again, they represent it in all these different movies. And, again, this ties right back in with the symbology of Saturn and the cube, all right? And what the cube really is, I'm tired of watching all these videos of people showing the cube and talking about the cube and not actually talking about what the cube even freaking means. So right now I'm gonna lay it on you, right? The cube is lead, and the cube is carbon, and the cube is physical reality, right? It's not this just the symbol of enslavement, okay? Yes, physical reality is what we are contained in our physical bodies, right? But it's not, physical reality isn't evil per se, okay? We are only locked in our body if we don't have the ability to unite the hemisphere of the brain and return to that triune trinity state of oneness. Basically, as long as we're locked in duality, we are trapped inside of the physical matrix. And, going back to the Nazis and Antifa, they're a perfect example of people who are literally trapped inside of physical reality, and they can't see the higher triangular, point of wisdom. Right. So lead also is what they use to repel radiation. Right. Light does not enter into lead. Lead repels light. Right. So when you go to the dentist, they put the lead vest on you. Basically, doesn't cover your head or your thyroid, but it covers, down here from radiation. But lead reflects energy. So a person who is Saturnalian, who is resonating with lead, right? What do they make lead? What do they make out of lead? Bullets. Right. Pipes. Like, basically lead is also cubic, right? It's face-centered cubic structure, right? So lead is the cube, right? Lead is dead, right? Lead is the metal, it's the densest metal, right? Everything in this universe either is increasing to gold or decreasing to lead, and that's kind of the alchemical metaphor of, lead into gold. But what the Jesuits and the Empire does is they convert gold into lead, and that's the human species. They want to divide people, and they've taken us out of a golden age. Well, they didn't do all of it, but suffice to say that as we exited from this place of paradise, right? We the All of a sudden we had to work for our food, right? We are no longer just given this infinite abundance by Saturn and its plasma sheath that just made food grow abundantly, fruit growing plants grow abundantly all over the place. These huge fruits, right, would have been just growing. At the same time, there were all these huge animals, right? And man didn't have to work. It was this big party all the time. And so people who are resonating with the Saturnalian energy, they're at once deadening themselves to the suffering, but they're also restoring that state of paradise for themselves, right? So the people who rule the world, it's not about money per se to them. Money is the tool that they use to keep real wealth, and the real wealth is the clean water, the food, the experience of life, not having to work, riding on their yachts all day, right? So they preserve the state of paradise for themselves, and they, in doing that, they enslave the entire species of humanity using money, using systems of control, using division and language and religion to create these fighting opposites, right? So they create paradise for themselves, but the cost of that is that they enslave the species, and that is the cult of Saturn. And that is what these people are doing right now in the United States, is trying to divide people using their artificial division and their contrived narratives, and to try and start something of a civil war and lead to more communism, lead to more of their just hierarchical centralization of power, what they've been at since Akhenaten, since old Moses, right? Is centralizing power and making the worship of other, deities and the other schools of thought illegal, right? The cube is also carbon. It is physical reality. It is basically our bodies and the evolution of physical matter, right? 666, basically 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons, right? So again, you can say 666, the number of a beast, the number of man, oh my God, it's evil, it's the devil, but basically the number of a man, the number of the beast. The beast is the body, okay? Do you know the nature of the beast? Beast, right? The nature of the beast is the nature of the animalistic man, right? So, like Hunter Thompson said, he who makes a beast out of himself gets rid of the pain of being a man, right? And that's what people are doing. They're making beasts out of themselves, and the empire facilitates that through the trauma, through the drugs, through the, shitty food, right? And, the 666 basically, in esoteric terms, represents the carbon atom. It represents physical reality, the cube, right? And so you can say that's evil. Sure, I mean, anything's good and anything's evil depending on how it's used, but basically 666 also represents the future evolution of the human species and the perfection of the human race, so that it becomes something, the next race, the superhuman that will be created from the stock of the current humans. That is our future course of evolution when you really think about it, and it really can't be perceived any other way unless you want to just say that we're all just going to kill each other and die out. But even in that situation, my brothers, even if the human race goes and starts a nuclear war, or Yellowstone goes off and has a whole, volcanic winter, right? There's still going to be some people who survive. There's still going to be some people who carry on the knowledge, and that is what we're preparing for, because we're going into the grand solar minimum, and it's going to get real. Another symbol of Saturn is the hourglass, right? He is the keeper of time. So we fell out of alignment with Saturn, and all of a sudden time began. These cycles began. You shall work by the sweat of your brow, right? You shall bear children, and it's sin, right? This was the advent of sin, right? But this is just really interesting with the hourglass. It's affiliated with time, but also it's the convergence of two opposing fields, right? That is also the symbolism of the hourglass. And it's very interesting. I saw this video, the primer fields. Okay, this is absolutely fascinating. This guy, David Lapointe, creates stars in the laboratory, spheres of glowing plasma, by using these magnetic field generators and basically running an electric current through it, right? So these are basically bowls, they're domes, right? And there's a hole in it, and basically there's electricity going through, and these curved magnetic field emitters facing each other, creating this triangle up and a triangle down, this vortex spinning into a central singularity. He creates stars in the laboratory, spheres of glowing plasma in the laboratory. Okay, so again, Saturn, under this theory, used to be a dwarf star, right? And the Earth was locked, basically in its wake, and at the North Pole was Saturn, basically, and it was just sending this bridge, this rainbow bridge of energy, the world tree, sending this energy down to the North Pole, to Hyperborea, right? And there were people living in Hyperborea who were the keepers of the world tree, and that was the home of the gods. Okay, is this starting to pick up for those of you who know mythology, especially Norse mythology? Is this starting to sound a little familiar? Vortex-based mathematics, right? This is everything. They're the magnetic fields of the Earth, right? They're even right now, long since the Saturn configuration has ceased to exist, the Earth is still a Taurus. It still takes in energy from the sun in this way. And we've been having a solar storm for like the last 5 days. And so this is getting bounced around by, the energy coming from the sun. And this is the energy that gets taken into the Earth. It gets filtered by the Earth. It creates the Earth's energy, the star inside the Earth, the conscious field of the Earth, and Earth generates life. All right. Earth is generating life. It is not an aberration. It is a product of the universe because the universe is alive and the universe is conscious. And that is what theosophy teaches. And it is a threat to those of a communist mentality, the lead, dead, cube mentality, everything always inside the box, nothing outside, right? And the box, everything inside the box is predictable. And that is what the box is all about. Vortex-based mathematics, this is where you get into the power of the numbers. Numbers are not just quantities, they are identities, right? And they have specific meaning. And vortex-based mathematics, again, here you see basically the torus mixed with the up vortex and the down vortex. This is the cube, right? This is the singularity, right? So you can just get scared and put some intense music and show all these cubes and not give anybody the wisdom. Or you can start talking about how the cube is physical reality, right? It is a prison only when we are stuck inside the state of division, and that vortex-based mathematics, the 3, 6, and 9, like Tesla said, are the key out of duality. The Trinity is a manifestation of the singularity, and that's what the secret doctrine of Blavatsky is talking all about, taking the sources from ancient Tibet, right? Like human beings have been here for millions of years. We built the pyramids. We used to have a whole global civilization, several of them actually, from Hyperborea to Atlantis to Lemuria. And the critical mass point has been reached. This is not ridiculous. I'm not even afraid of any trolls coming at me at this point because it's so obvious. It's so obvious. It's everywhere, right? Another symbol of Saturn, right? The sin. This again, for those who know the Masonic, like symbol, this will immediately resonate. The up triangle, the down triangle, right? And then we have the bar going through, right? And this also, so this represents the up and the down, the fusion. And Yahweh, Yod-He Vod-He, the name of God, right? Which is actually Saturn, is basically if you break down what those characters mean, it is the vortex up and the vortex down to create the singularity. They'll even tell you basically what Yahweh means is literally like the force that is created when you kink a hose, like a water hose, right? So it's that force that's generated from that squeezing, right? That point of contact, right? And that's what Yahweh is, and it is Saturn, and it is the force inside of, the Saturn as a dwarf star, Saturn as a planet, as well as the sun, because it's everything, right? But when the Earth fell out of alignment with Saturn, all of a sudden time started, right? And humans, our super long lifespan turned into these short lifespans, right? And now we're locked inside of time. We never learn the lessons. We never learn the meanings of the words because we just, we're born and then some shit happens and then we get old and we die, right? But when people lived longer and they had time to basically learn about the world that they were living in, there was necessarily higher thinking going on. But the more that people are locked into materiality and the cycle of death, right? The cycle of time, the cycle of Saturn, right? Since we fell out of paradise, we fell out of alignment. Time is sin, right? Is sin. The wages of sin is death. The wages of time is death. Everyone dies in time, right? But if you were not in time and there weren't these cycles you were constantly moving through, you would not age and you would not die. The polar configuration, again, this is a great image kind of showing that basically there would have been this tree, this world tree going up to the planet, to the gods, to Saturn, to Mars, to Venus. There would have been this Hyperborean civilization at the top of the world. There would have been this ice ring, right? So this probably, the constructions of the world as a flat plane, maybe those came from the Hyperboreans. They thought they did live on a flat plane, or at least the commoners among them, maybe, because it would have been kind of like a flat plane surrounded by an ice wall. But for most of the humans, they would have been down here in the rest of the planet, not taking in directly the energy from the gods, but still living in a virtual paradise where, the Nile was a paradise, the whole Sahara was green, right? But up here was Hyperborea, and this is where supposedly the people of, several nations came out of. but also specifically like, the redhead and the blonde genes. And this is literally where the whole cult of the Aryan race comes out of, is this was the Hyperboreans who Saturn fell out of configuration. This tree was destroyed. This bridge, this rainbow bridge, was disconnected, and this civilization right here sunk back into, was destroyed by water. And you had the survivors leaving Hyperborea and going down into the civilizations of what they called Middle Earth, right? The gods descended to Middle Earth, and basically, again, I'm going to get into this in more depth. I don't want to burden you guys too much. This is already a big enough topic. But basically, when we fell out of alignment with Saturn about 10 and 12,000 years ago, or maybe longer than that, who knows? But basically, something happened and it caused a cataclysm, and people who were very wise spiritual elders were forced to flee their homeland from Hyperborea into Middle Earth. Saturn has fathered time, right? Again, basically, time is the master, right? Time is our God. In God we trust, right? Is on money, and money is just a measure of time and energy, right? So this cabal, this priesthood, this fascist, hierarchical priesthood, these secret societies, they have enslaved humanity to preserve a paradise for themselves, okay? Because they understand that time in this world, they will all die, so they don't want to do work. They just want to live in paradise, and let everybody else die and suffer and work for them, right? And we don't want to do that. We don't want to just be slaves. We want to all enjoy paradise, and that is what we can achieve, and that is what we will achieve, and that is the point of this video and all of the people who are coming out to Jedi, as I've called them. Basically, we're coming out to basically break the matrix and break the lies, right? Self-mastery. The truly free individual is free only to the degree of his own self-mastery, while those who will not govern themselves are condemned to find masters to rule over them, right? And that's it. Basically, as long as we are divided, right? As long as it's this craziness, that they have set up for us, this fake, duality, right? The Nazis versus the communists. I mean, come on. Are most Americans really Nazis or communists? I don't really believe that. And I think that what's really happening is their plan is backfiring, and that in trying to divide human race in a state of enlightenment, in a state of the new Gutenberg Bible, which is the internet, right? The new printing press and the new dissemination of infinite information, right? That is the internet, and we are basically uniting the opposites, and we are bringing a higher state of awareness into this planet. And so, that's what this is really about, the apocalypse, the lifting of the veil. And we are going to not just be the children of paradise, whining and screaming about what we've lost, about what our parents took away from us. Never mind the fact that we had to leave our parents eventually. That was always part of the plan. Saturn was never going to take care of us forever. We should never have expected that, and it's an infantile remnant of our psychology that we still expect God to take care of us. We are the children of God. We are made in the image of the divine allspark. Whether it's the cube does not contain me. I have opened my cube. I have opened Pandora's box, and I now control everything in my universe, right? And they want to make this information scary to you. They want you to run away and hide and go back to your false church, or basically your movies or your drugs, and they want you to basically just hide from the truth. But the truth is that it's not scary. It's a beautiful, amazing universe that we live in, and there is an infinitely loving consciousness waiting to receive us as soon as we unite the opposites and let the hemispheres talk to one another to unite the left and the right into a higher triangulation, a higher reality, and a harmony among them. Okay? And through doing that, we will be able to build paradise on earth once more. So that's it for today, my brothers, my sisters. I hope you take this information as I meant it. Again, not to create a new scapegoat, and that this is all just about hating Catholics now instead of hating Nazis or hating Jews. It's not about hate. It's about understanding that we've all been through some crazy, crazy shit. All right, we've experienced some trauma. The people who are committing trauma against us, they have experienced profound trauma. And the spiritual masters, from Jesus to Buddha have said, basically the ancient wisdom of the gods is that we only graduate from the lesson of physical reality when we learn to unite the hemispheres, when we learn to stop judging, and we learn to just simply perceive and to act in compassion and to neutralize that karma. and to resolve the timeline and to create something new and beautiful and amazing in the space where once there was just fighting and conflict and all right. So that's why I'm making this video, to bring peace on earth so we can build a paradise. So if anybody's got a problem with that, well, you got a problem with a lot. So with that, wholeness and balanced vibrations, hope you guys have a great day, a great week, and a great lifetime. And throwing that right into this eclipse so that we can start a whole new fresh world on Monday. Cheers, brothers.